Sarajevo, June 28th, 1914. The streets are lined with crowds. Flags wave in the summer heat. A motorcade moves slowly. Through the city open cars, smiling faces, the pageantry of empire on full display. And then, 2 gunshots. A young man steps forward from the crowd. His arm extends. The world changes. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, slumps in his seat. Beside him, his wife Sophie reaches for him, and she, too, collapses. Blood spreads across white fabric. The crowd erupts into screaming. In that single moment, in that unremarkable street in a city most of Europe couldn't find on a map, the countdown began. 20 million people would die because of what happened next. How does one assassination end an entire world? In the summer of 1914, Europe considered itself the pinnacle of human civilization. Its cities glittered with electricity, its factories churned with industrial power, its universities produced the greatest minds in human history. Europeans had invented the telephone, the railway, the modern state. They had colonized half the globe and called it progress. They genuinely believed, that they were too advanced for total war. They were wrong. Beneath the gleaming surface of European civilization lay something ancient. Explosive nationalism that burned like fever, military alliances that bound, nations together like tripwires, imperial rivalries that seethed for decades, and an arms race that had been stockpiling the machinery of industrial death for 30 years. Europe in 1914 was not a civilization at its peak. It was a continent soaked in gasoline, waiting for a spark. And on the 28th of June 1914, the spark arrived. What followed was 39 days. 39 days in which the leaders of the most powerful nations on Earth were given every opportunity to stop what was coming and failed, one by one, to take it. This is the story of those 39 days. To understand what happened in the summer of 1914, you must first understand the world that existed before it. Germany was young, hungry, and frightening. Unified only in 1871, it had risen with astonishing speed to become the industrial and military powerhouse of the continent. Kaiser Wilhelm II. Impulsive, insecure, consumed by a desperate need to be taken seriously, led a nation that wanted its place in the sun, a nation that looked at the British Empire's global dominance and felt cheated. Britain watched Germany's rise with cold, quiet dread. The world's greatest naval power saw German shipbuilding as an existential threat. 2 industrial giants, separated by the narrow waters of the North Sea, staring at each other across decades of suspicion. France had never forgiven Germany for 1871, for the humiliation of the Franco-Prussian War, for the loss of Alsace-Lorraine, for the German emperor being crowned in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. Revenge was not merely a political aspiration in France. It was a wound that entire generations had grown up nursing. Russia saw itself as the protector of Slavic peoples across Europe, a vast, creaking empire held together by tradition and autocracy, presided over by Tsar Nicholas II, a man too gentle and too weak for the catastrophic role history was about to assign him. And at the heart of it all sat Austria-Hungary, the old empire, ancient and exhausted, ruled by the 84-year-old Emperor Franz Joseph, watching its multi-ethnic empire fracture from within. Serbs, Czechs, Croats, Romanians, all demanding the one thing empires cannot survive: self-determination. Serbia was the most dangerous piece on the board. Small but fierce, newly emboldened after the Balkan Wars, Serbia dreamed of uniting all South Slavic peoples under one flag. 2. Austria-Hungary, that dream was an existential threat. Serbia was a dagger pointed at the fret. empire's heart. And connecting all of them like a web of gunpowder trails were the alliances. The Triple Alliance bound Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy together. The Triple Entente linked France, Russia, and Britain. These agreements were meant to preserve peace through deterrence. Instead, they guaranteed that any conflict between two nations would pull in all the others. The generals prepared, the arsenals filled, the dreadnoughts were launched, somewhere in the close. Subconscious of European civilization, everyone sensed what was coming. No one stopped it. The Archduke was stiff, formal, uncomfortable with the public, a man of fierce opinions and few friends. Even within the Habsburg court, he was tolerated more than adored. But he had one love. That was absolute and unconditional. Sophie, his wife. Sophie Chotek was considered beneath his station, a countess, not a princess, and the Habsburg court never let her forget it. At official functions, she could not ride in the same carriage as her husband. She could not sit beside him at state dinners. She could not even be buried beside him when she died. But in Sarajevo, on June 28, 1914, the couple's wedding anniversary, Sophie was permitted to sit beside her husband in the open car. It was one of the rare days when protocol yielded to love. It was the day they were murdered. The man who pulled the trigger was 19 years old. Gavrilo Princip was a Bosnian Serb nationalist, a member of a shadowy network called the Black Hand, a group of Serbian militants who believed that violence was the only language empires understood. He was small, thin, suffering from tuberculosis, burning with idealism and fury. He believed he was about to strike a blow for Serbian freedom. The assassination almost didn't happen. Earlier that morning, another member of the Black Hand had thrown a bomb at the Archduke's motorcade. It bounced off the car and exploded beneath the vehicle behind it, injuring several people. The motorcade accelerated and sped away. The plot had apparently failed. But then came the moment that history would never stop talking about. The Archduke's driver, unfamiliar with the changed route, took a wrong turn. An aide called out the mistake. The driver stopped directly in front of Schiller's Delicatessen on Franz Josef Street. Gavrilo Princip was standing there. He had wandered to that corner after the failed bombing. His mission apparently over, his opportunity gone. And then, as if fate itself were settling a debt, the Archduke's car stopped. Engine stalled, driver fumbling to reverse not 5 feet from where he stood. Princip did not hesitate. 2 shots. The first struck Franz Ferdinand in the jugular. The second struck Sophie in the sankan, abdomen. The Archduke turned to his wife, blood pouring from his neck, and spoke the last words she would ever hear from him. Sophie dear, don't die. Stay alive for our children. She was already gone. He followed within the hour. In Vienna, in Berlin, in St. Petersburg, in London, no one yet understood what those 2 shots had set in motion. The world had 30 days left. Day 1. Vienna received the news of the assassination with shock and with something else, relief. The hawks in the Austro-Hungarian government had wanted a pretext to crush Serbia for years. Now, they had one, served to them in blood. But Austria-Hungary was afraid of Russia. Any military action against Serbia risked drawing in the bars. Russian bear. Before they could move, they needed assurance from their German allies. They got more than assurance. Kaiser Wilhelm II, impulsive as ever, gave Austria-Hungary what historians would later call the blank check, an unconditional promise of German support for whatever action Austria decided to take against Serbia. Whatever you decide to do, Germany stands behind you. It was the most reckless diplomatic act of the 20th century. The Kaiser believed it would stay a local conflict. A quick punishment of Serbia, Russia would back down. and Europe would move on. He was catastrophically wrong. Austria-Hungary spent 3 weeks drafting an ultimatum to Serbia, a document designed to be rejected. Its demands were so sweeping, so deliberately humiliating, that no sovereign nation could accept them and remain independent. The Austrians sent it on July 23rd, giving Serbia 48 hours to respond. Serbia's response stunned Europe. It was conciliatory, carefully measured, agreeing to nearly every demand. Even Kaiser Wilhelm, reading it in Berlin, admitted privately that the grounds for war had disappeared. But Austria-Hungary rejected it anyway. On July 28th, exactly 1 month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and the dominoes began to fall. Russia could not abandon Serbia. Tsar Nicholas ordered partial mobilization of the Russian army, a signal of support meant as a warning. But military machines, once set in motion, are not easily stopped. Russia's generals warned that partial mobilization was militarily useless. It had to be full mobilization or nothing. The Tsar hesitated, and in his hesitation, the last real chance for peace slipped away. Germany watched Russia mobilize with mounting panic. The German war plan, the Schlieffen Plan, was built on a nightmare scenario, a two-front war against France in the west and Russia in the east. The only way Germany believed it could survive such a war was to knock France out quickly in the west, then turn east to face Russia. But that plan required speed. Every day Russia mobilized was a day Germany lost. On August 1st, Germany declared war on Russia. On August 3rd, Germany declared war on France. To attack France quickly, Germany needed to march through Belgium, a neutral country whose independence had been guaranteed by treaty since 1839. German generals knew this violated international law. They calculated that Belgium would surrender immediately, and Britain would stay out. Belgium refused to yield, and Britain, bound by treaty to protect Belgian neutrality, issued Germany an ultimatum: withdraw from Belgium by midnight or face war. Midnight came. Germany did not withdraw. On August 4th, 1914, Britain declared war on Germany. In 39 days, a single assassination had ignited a continental war. The most powerful empires on Earth were now locked in a conflict that none of them had truly planned for, and none of them knew how to stop. They thought it would be over by Christmas. The generals had promised their emperors a short, sharp, decisive war cavalry charges, heroic advances, the clean resolution of conflict that history books described. Young men across Europe enlisted in euphoric crowds, afraid the war would end before they got their chance at glory. What they found was something humanity had never seen before. The Western Front became a scar across the face of Europe, 450 miles of trenches stretching. From the English Channel to the Swiss border, men lived in the mud like animals, shelled day and night by artillery that could fire 200 rounds per minute. The ground between the opposing lines, no man's land, was a wasteland of craters, barbed wire, and unburied dead. Industrial civilization had created weapons of mass destruction. It had not created the wisdom to use them sparingly. The machine gun ended the era of the charge. Tens of thousands of men would advance across open ground into sheets of fire and be mown down in minutes. At the Battle of the Somme, on a single day, July 1st, 1916, the British Army suffered 57,470 casualties before noon. And then came the poison gas. Chlorine, phosgene, mustard gas, clouds of chemical death rolling across no man's land on the morning breeze. Men who survived the gas often wished they hadn't lungs destroyed, eyes burned, skin blistered from the inside out. The leaders who had launched this war sat in their palaces and headquarters, moving pins on maps, issuing orders, writing communiques. Most of them would never hear a shot fired in anger. In the trenches, the soldiers understood something their commanders refused to accept. There was no glory here. There was only mud and rats and the sound of the man beside you dying. We are the hollow men. We are the stuffed men. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper. By the time it was over, 4 years later, 20 million human beings were dead. 20 million! More were wounded. 4 empires, the Ottoman, the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian, the German had ceased to exist. The map of the world had been redrawn in blood. The civilization that had proudly called itself the pinnacle of human achievement had destroyed itself. We look back at 1914 and we ask the question that never stops haunting us. Could it have been stopped? The answer, painfully, is yes. 1,000 times. At 1,000 different moments. If the Kaiser had not issued the blank check, if the Tsar had held firm on partial mobilization, if Austria had accepted Serbia's conciliatory response, if any one leader in any one capital had chosen caution over pride, the chain might have broken. But they didn't, because they couldn't. Not really. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand was not the cause of World War I. It was the match. The fuel had been laid for decades by empires competing for dominance, by generals glorifying war, by politicians who mistook nationalism for strength, by a civilization that had mastered the technology of destruction while utterly failing to master the wisdom of restraint. Gavrilo Princip did not create World War I, he simply revealed it. Europe in 1914 was a world that had been racing toward catastrophe for a generation. The alliances, the arms races, the imperial rivalries, the wounded national pride, all of it was pointing in one direction. The assassination simply removed the last reason anyone had to pretend otherwise. And so the most educated, the most industrialized, the most artistically and scientifically advanced civilization in human history walked with its eyes open into an industrial slaughterhouse. Pride could not yield, honor could not bend, empires could not appear weak. And so millions of men who had nothing to do with the pride of emperors paid with everything they had. There is a lesson here that every generation must relearn for itself, because every generation, it seems, is capable of forgetting it. Technology does not make us wise. Power does not make us safe. Civilization is not a permanent condition. It is a choice made every day, in every decision, by every leader who holds the power to send other people's sons to die. The 39 days of 1914 are not ancient history. They are a mirror, and what they reflect is a question that still has no comfortable answer. If the most civilized nations on Earth could sleepwalk into the greatest catastrophe in human history, what makes us so certain that we could not do the same? The bullet that killed Franz Ferdinand did not start World War I. It simply proved that the war had already been decided in the boardrooms, the palaces, the war ministries, and the hearts of men who believed that their pride was worth more than other people's lives. Some lessons cost 20 million lives to learn. We are still deciding whether we learned them.